What does your self-worth have to do with the rule of law? What does our nation's destiny have to do with it? It's a question that I've been thinking for quite some time now. For the 5 years that I attended National Law School, Bangalore, every day as I walked to class, Lord Denning's words stared me in the face. Be they ever so high, that the law is always above you. Was Lord Denning trying to warn us? Was he aware of India's Mai-Baap culture? And was he trying to tell us that, I don't care who your father is or your mother is or where you come from, but you better follow the law? Or was he actually trying to encourage us to be such strong and powerful individuals that we could defer to the law even when it clashed with our own narrow self-interests? It was these questions that led me to the world of social justice litigation. I turned my back on defined pathways of success, and I found myself in the Bombay High Court without an idea of a defined career. But I have questions. The Constitution made bold promises of justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Could these actually be brought to life? As a lawyer, I had the opportunity of meeting many people. People that had been arrested on fabricated and exaggerated charges. People that had lost their jobs because they stood up for sexual harassment at the workplace. People that had been thrown onto the streets because they had lost their husbands to the social ill of manual scavenging, and there was nobody in sight to pay them their due compensation. I also met another kind of people, the people on the other side, people that were so powerful and so privileged that the entire system, be it the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and even our fourth estate, which is the media, the whole system would be tilted in their favor. If it wasn't for the rule of law, because in all the cases that I mentioned, I actually saw justice happen. And it was only possible because of the rule of law. For the uninitiated, the rule of law was propounded by the British constitutional jurist A.V. Dicey and went on to form the bedrock of modern constitutional democracies. And two propositions from his rule of law, as opposed to the rule of men and women, remain relevant to the Indian context. First, every person, irrespective of rank, of authority, of lineage, of privilege, every person is equal before the law. And the second proposition, that liberty of an individual is sacrosanct. It can only be taken away if there is a valid law. Nobody could arbitrarily exercise their power to take away a person's liberty. As I saw rule of law take place in the courts, I saw the stories of the people that I was representing change. From a look of despair and helplessness that were the widows of manual scavengers or the women that lost their jobs because they spoke up against sexual harassment. Their stories were rewritten and their destiny started to change as their helplessness was replaced by a sense of empowerment. So I developed a newfound conviction that the rule of law is absolutely essential for our growth as human beings and for India's growth. But people would keep coming and telling me, Isha, you are too idealistic. You have not seen the world out there, and all of your knowledge and your philosophies are textbookish. Once you see the real world, you will understand that the rule of law is not so easy to implement. And it's with that curiosity to understand that could the rule of law truly be implemented at the grassroots, freely, fairly, without undue favor to anybody, that had me transitioning from a life of a lawyer, and I traded in the black robes to the khaki, which is the uniform of the Indian police service. And just like that, from the comforts of my plush South Bombay air-conditioned office, I was thrown into the trenches and ditches of policing as I learned how to navigate national security. I learned how to survive in jungles. I learned how to sleep in the rain. I learned how to climb mountains, how to handle some of the most dangerous weapons. And I learned how to push myself beyond I could have even imagined before. Now, one more thing that the training taught us was it brought us in touch with a lot of people. I learned what it's like for the army to guard our borders at minus 30, minus 40 degrees in the middle of the night. I learned what it's like for a paramilitary to be in the middle of the jungle in faraway areas for months at a stretch, so far away from their families, just so that they could protect us against militants and Naxals. I also learned what it's like for a police constable to sacrifice every single holiday so that public festivals and processions and protests could happen in safe spaces. So I learned the amount of sacrifice that was being made for our collective security. And it made me realize that the rule of law that we talk about so often is not just a textbook or an armchair discussion. It really goes something deeper than that. It is the fundamental duty that we owe to one another as human beings. It is a recognition of the contribution of the community and the sacrifice that people make so that we can live our greatest life possible. It taught me the value of fraternity, which is so boldly written in our Constitution. But none of these realizations could have prepared me for what came next, which is becoming a station house officer in a police station in the streets of Old Delhi. That was the last leg of our training, where I had to take over a small police station called Lahori Gate in the middle of Chandni Chowk. And just like that, all of a sudden, I had 60 odd police personnel who had decades of duty reporting to me and looking for guidance to me. They wanted me to tell them how I would ensure that there was law and order in the area, how the marketplace would be safe, how the residents could sleep safely at night, how were we going to deal with the criminals and the thefts that were taking place, how were we going to deal with the problems of enforcement that were coming up. I also learned that policing was not easy. With all of this, I also had to answer to my bosses, my superiors. I also had to do high-level investigation while trying to apprehend accused that were absconding and make recoveries. We had to ensure that the accused was produced before the court within 24 hours of arrest and constantly also appear in court for bail hearings for trial. And in 2 days, I was done. I said this was a mistake. I don't know what I was thinking. There was no way I could implement the rule of law when there were so many demands being made on me and on my time. And I was ready to give up and go back to the comforts of my life in Bombay. Till I realized, and I looked back on my training, that we were taught to do the impossible. That's what the police training was for. So I got up the next day and I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to prove them wrong, and I'm going to prove myself wrong. The rule of law is possible. It's not easy, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's possible, and it is going to make a difference. So I suddenly found myself getting out of my comfort zone, and I was on the streets of Chandni Chowk, clearing out encroachments, chalaning all the vehicles that were parked in the middle because those roads would never move, and there was so much theft and street crime that was taking place. And we faced a lot of opposition. You know, we always read in papers that people are really unhappy because the law is not being implemented. But the truth is, people can be far more unhappy when the law is implemented. And we faced a lot of backlash for chalaning people's vehicles or removing their shops when they were unauthorizedly placed in the middle of the street. But the thing with the rule of law is that even though it's uncomfortable, it delivers. And within a few days, it exactly started flowing smoothly. The places that were perpetually jammed stopped. The crowds became more comfortable navigating the market areas. The number of accidents reported went down to nil, and the thefts that were taking place dramatically reduced. And before my own eyes, I realized with that we also had more time to do other things like focus on our case files, our investigations. Similarly, when I went to a bigger police station where around 150 people were reporting to me, we checked the illegal sand mining. We also checked robberies that were taking place on the ring road. And through all these experiences, there was this one riot that took place where people actually damaged public property. And my entire police station was terrified of taking action against them because they said that, Madam, nobody touches these kind of people. They're just really powerful. But we said, it doesn't matter what anybody says or what the consequences are going to be. We're going to follow the law. And we had CCTV footage. So based on evidence and the rule of law, we charge-sheeted that case irrespective of the extraneous influences that were being put on us. And we also then ensured that those people went to trial. And just like that, one tiny free and fair enforcement completely changed the dynamic of that community. Now, our own people were more confident to go there. Other people who these people had been bullying or scared felt safer to navigate the streets and to do their lawful business. So all of this, there are multiple stories, and I could go on about how important it is to implement the rule of law. But all of this taught me three takeaways, really. First, that when we implement the rule of law without fear or favor, with courage and integrity, justice happens. And that is perhaps one of the greatest feelings in the whole world. Second, when we implemented the rule of law, the whole organization developed a sense of confidence. Police officers were more motivated because now they could work independently, autonomously. And third, which is perhaps the greatest and most important takeaway, the public started pouring into the police station. I remember one staff coming up to me and saying, now people feel like they're going to be heard, even when they have nothing to offer except for their grievances. But resolving grievances as per law is precisely what the police station was for. So implementing the rule of law is actually integral to rejuvenating public trust, community trust. And although people have been telling me, till date, people say that the rule of law is not enough. But the more I've gone on the field, I've noticed that the rule of law is the vital ingredient that India needs to become the unstoppable country that it can be. So I take this opportunity today for all of you, because we're all part of this system, to come together and cultivate a deep sense of responsibility. As one of India's favorite lawyers, Nani Palkiwala, said, that vigilance, eternal vigilance, is the price of liberty. But eternal responsibility is also the price of liberty. So I invite you all to take more responsibility so that we all can come together and uphold the law of the land. Because when we do that, justice, equality, liberty, fraternity, they come to life. But fairness also comes to life. And where there is fairness, there is merit, there is talent, there is growth. And that is the place where dreams take flight. So on that note, I would say that if we were to follow the rule of law, I truly believe that our country would awake into the heaven of freedom that Rabindranath Tagore so dearly yearned for. Jai Hind.